another edition of Grown Folks Business. It's a beautiful Thursday.
Can I tell you, it's still, to Andre's point, Jay Dwayne's point, it's still so prevalent. And I know I'm tired. I can't imagine what you guys are like being in that skin and like, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
And wholeness. I want to live a life without any lack. And that's my ultimate desire. And it's really about inventory, if you will.
Whatnot. And you get really busy and you get on a train track that just carries you through a number of years.
We shared with mom and family that, we won't be there. We won't be home every Christmas. With birthdays that we'll celebrate. We'll call, we'll celebrate, but it might not be on that day.
All right, guys, welcome to another edition of Grown Folks Business. Let me ask, as always, that you police your mute button in case you back there scrambling eggs or blending up your nightly ritual drink. Glad to see you guys. We're going to get to a show that we were supposed to do a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to have a fun conversation that is primarily centered on, as soon as we figure out what's going on. We good? That's primarily centered on this culture of tipping that we have in America at this point. So I want to make sure I shout out the usual suspects, Lisa, Jay, Bob. I know a couple of them are up to some other things this evening. And I also want to thank everyone who participated in our live recording of Grown Folks Business last week at the Carolina Theater. It was a really good time. We had some really good food and some really good conversation. And hopefully in the next couple of weeks, that'll be coming to you, you all in Cyberland who wish to view that. It was a really beautiful evening. And I look forward to you guys being able to give us some feedback about what you thought. We definitely plan to do it again in 2024. So look forward to it. Not sure if you can, Kaylee, can you bring the image closer up to the screen? Because it's dropped back. Is there anything we can do about that? Or is it just me?
No, it's not you. There's something goofy going on with the StreamYard. I'm trying to troubleshoot it too. So we're playing around with it. Caleb, you see a different option on there. Under the screen, there's a couple of little blocks on there, but I only see one layout instead of four like it used to be. So
interesting.
But yeah, keep going. We'll figure it out.
All right. Well, tonight's topic again is one we did not get to a couple of weeks ago. We had some technical difficulties, and I know a couple people had come down with some temporary illnesses, if that's a word, that shelved them for a little bit. But tonight we're going to talk about It Rolls Downhill. Is our tipping culture out of control? So I know I'm not the only person. There we go. Thank you. I know I'm not the only person who has observed that now when you go to places to get something or to pick up something, there's this almost casual, normalized encouragement to tip. Even if it's not said, there's going to be a screen that pops up where you make your payment that's going to say something about a tip. I'm a big fan of quality service. I'm a big appreciator of whenever you go somewhere and somebody's serving you, you compensate them extra for doing extra well with the service they provide. But I'm wondering if we're going to a point where it becomes expectative and not representative of, hey, this service was so above board and above quality that I want to make sure this person understands how much I appreciate that. I think it's becoming an inherent thing, and I think it's setting a dangerous precedent for us. So you guys got my feelings on the matter. Now I'm going to get yours. So Meryl, Celeste, glad to have you. Kaylee, thank you for being behind the scenes and keeping us rolling. We miss you, Danya. Hope you're doing well. So is our tipping culture out of control? That's the first broad question. I'll get into a couple of specifics as we go along. But is our tipping culture out of control? Doesn't mean you shouldn't tip. I'm a big fan of tipping, but I'm just questioning things because it's so rampant. It's at every turn. So Celeste, I'll start with you. Your immediate thoughts on whether our tipping culture is out of control.
Tipping culture is out of control simply because people use it as an excuse not to pay folks a living wage. There is no reason the workers at my local Subway make $8.50 an hour. I'm sorry, like $8.50 an hour, even if you feel the work isn't important and crucial, it's ridiculous. Like $8.50, like I don't even know what to say other than $8.50 an hour. The average person's rent, even in North Carolina, I'm sorry, my dog is deciding that now is the time he wants to get up from his nap and play and make noise. But $8.50 an hour when the average person's rent is $1,300 a month in the city of Greensboro. I think in Durham, a college town, the average rent is $1,400 a month, and that the worker at Subway makes $8.50 an hour. And at the end of the service, they give you the menu to tip, and you know most people are going to hit no tip, especially because no tip is right there. It's the first thing that you see when it pops up. You have to choose to see the 15, 20, and 25%. No, by all means, that people are using, business owners, businesses are using tipping as a way to not pay a living wage. I mean, that's technically what tipping was for anyway. Because what is it? If you don't make $7.25, well, I know that's how the old thing used to be. I know we haven't technically raised minimum wage, but if the waiter, waitress, server, service worker didn't make up to $7.25, that's when the $7.25 wage would have to tip in. But basically, tipping would pay the wages. Tipping has gotten out of control because you can't survive off of $7.25 anymore. Go ahead and pay folks a living wage of $15 an hour for your business, and then if people choose to tip after that, they choose to tip. But either way, that person has a living wage. Tipping should not be what somebody is forced to live off of, and it shouldn't be a way for you to essentially get away with not paying your worker. Essentially, you're paying them out of the kindness of somebody else's heart. So I'm just like, yes, I agree with tipping. I think tipping is a wonderful thing. But the reason tipping was invented and the reason tipping is used, no, I'm not with it. Pay people, and don't pay nobody no $8.50 an hour. That is ridiculous.
Well, I'm gonna actually probably give you another opportunity to unpack that even further, because you got into one of the questions that's coming up, actually the first question. So you'll have another opportunity to unpack that further. Meryl, is our tipping culture out of control? And Mary Carmen, good to see you. Happy holidays.
I don't know if it's the tipping culture out of control. I agree with Celeste. I mean, like the issue, the bigger issue is like inflation, costs are going up. Wait staff folks, traditionally, trying to think of other earners, but I think it's mostly like folks that like get that work on tips. I guess back in the day, maybe they were like folks who worked on trains and folks who worked in like food services. The law would allow these employees to pay them. I don't know how much it is now, probably like $3 or $4 plus tips. So I really believe for folks who provide really good service and those type of stuff, like it's a specialty thing where you only get a certain amount, you should tip if you get good service. It's a little tricky with the tipping that I see now at everywhere you go. You go to the movies, you go to, a local store. They're trying to subsidize, an opportunity for those employees who aren't making a lot of money, like Celeste said, making $8, $8.50 hours, because that's all that, especially like a small business, that's all that they can afford to pay their folks because the costs are so high. Restaurants, other businesses go out of business all the time. Folks can't afford to pay their folks. And so I don't think the tipping culture is out of control. It's just that this, what's the standard of service, that you should be thinking about to tell somebody. But at the same time, it's like, golly, man, it's just so rough out here, like you feel bad. So if I feel like the tip is going directly to that person and they're going to benefit out of it, then the service can be just okay, and I'll be okay with it. If I know that it's going to that person. If I'm not so sure, I should feel comfortable to be like, you know what, service wasn't great. You just made me a coffee and hit a button, poured it in the cup. I shouldn't have to do it. Or if I go to the movie theater and I've already spent $38 for 2 people, um, all you did was hit a couple buttons, man. But I don't know, man. That's a tough one, man. Because I sympathize with the folks, the folks that are working at these low wages. You want to support them, but I'm just not sure that tip is landing in their hands. Like, if somebody does a personal service for me, I tip. Somebody, I'll order something. I'll like have somebody come and work at the house, fix something or do some personal care, get a massage, something like that. Like, I'm tipping that because I know that's going directly to that person. But when it goes to these large corporations, if I don't tip, I just that instant guilt part, because it's like right there in front of you, and the hit no just makes you feel a certain way. So I don't know, man. That's an interesting question. Depends. It depends. I guess what I'm saying. So my long-winded way is it depends.
No, we on the same page. So you guys are kind of jumping ahead to some things. So if I ask a question that is kind of reflective of what you just responded, just kind of go a little deeper and unpack it, because you went to the second question, Meryl. But the quality of service plays a significant role, but we're being guilted that no matter the kind of service we're receiving, the guilt is, you see the people that put the screen in front of you and they'll turn their head like it's like, no shame, just pick something. And I've been caught off guard with some of them 15 to 25% because it starts somewhere that you may not even think you need to pay. And you might just be picking up the food. That's the thing that's got me lately, is how we've so embraced this culture of tipping.
That's the one, Felton. If you order something on the phone, you go pick it up at the restaurant. All they did was hand it to you, and it's like,
it used to be understood.
Yeah.
It was an understood thing that you were picking up food. And there are certain places. One of them is a Japanese place that I think it's a Japanese Chinese fusion place that I go to sometimes. There's no mention of a tip, not even a look for a tip when you're picking up. It used to be understood that you're not utilizing the space, you're not using the restroom, you're not utilizing utensils, you're not having a server come out to serve you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're just picking up food. But that, I believe, became accelerated and normalized when COVID was happening, because there were certain restaurants that started charging you to pick up, even though we were encouraged not to be in public settings and you were still giving them your business. They started saying, well, you're not here in a capacity where you will tip a server. Let's put that tip inside of your to-go order. Kind of sensible, but now it's become a thing. It's just a thing. So it's kind of fascinating.
Changed how we do things in that regard, but people learned how to take advantage of it.
Absolutely.
Dealing with now, because yes, there's no reason I need to be paying an $8 service fee on a $20 order because you put it in the box. You would have been bringing it to the table if I was actually eating here. So
they would have had a dish to wash. Those are the things that have gotten lost. They're giving you a container that costs 2 cents on the dollar, and you are not dirtying their dishes, et cetera, et cetera. So Celeste, I'm coming back to you because, again, you already touched on this, so feel free to unpack it some more. What does the expectation or need for gratuity say about American business and employee salary? You can just, because you guys are already on the questions before we get to them. So what does it say about where we are in America?
I mean, it's weird because Meryl touched on it earlier, and every job that he described, working on the train as a waiter, working in the restaurant as a service worker, these were jobs for colored people. They were jobs for Black people. Black people were the reason that we have the base salary being like $2.20 an hour, and then the tip is supposed to make up the other $5 of it. Like, this comes from the Jim Crow South, and it speaks to America's capitalism because we've quote unquote and supposedly left Jim Crow South, which we very much have, because I also want to very much point out that a lot of these waiters, waitresses, and service workers are white kids in high school and college as well. I'm not going to sit up here and say that it's all Black people doing service jobs now, but, you know, we have quote unquote left Jim Crow South and everything else, but somehow, some way, the capitalism of paying a fair and living wage was separated from the Jim Crow South, and now it's just part of American capitalism. Like, business owners want to take home as much profit as possible, and paying $7.25, and most of that coming from tips instead of paid wages does it, then that's what we're gonna do. I mean, what is it today? Today it was a meme on social media that was going around. Socialism is being able to call the fire department to put the fire out at your house, and American capitalism is the insurance company being able to deny your claim after the fire is put out. And that, to me, that's kind of where tips, wages, and how we're doing that has played out now, because it's all going to be based off of American capitalism. It's all going to be based off of how much money that business can make and how much of that profit can be retained by the owner or the conglomerate or the corporation. And those workers that keep that business running and make that business run aren't even making a living wage. They're not making something that they can truly afford to live off of. If they are a single individual, if you're a single individual with no kids, you're not making it off of $7.25 in today's world.
Oh,
you're
absolutely
not off $8.50. Like, if you're a single person and you have one child, no spouse, just you and your child, I think you would need what, $22 an hour to survive.
It's like $27.50 if you adjust for inflation from the 70s. For like, and if you try to, it's almost $30 or so. What's going on, Jay? Glad you're making it here.
What's going on?
When you adjust for the fact that corporate salaries, C-suite salaries have gone through the roof and are at a ridiculous level, in contrast to how minusculely ascending salaries for workers have been, it's I think it's like $30 an hour to kind of almost balance that, Celeste. So we're not even talking about what you got to make up for.
I thought we were still at 22. Okay, so we basically at a point where if you're making $8.50 an hour, you are now in a place of, we already knew you were in a place of pure struggle, but if you're making $8.50 and statistics are saying that the average salary needed is $27 to $30 an hour.
Oh yeah, well, this is the thing. So these all numbers, can be flexed one way or another, but yes, it really does reflect poorly on American society that there's such a reliance on tips. That's at the core of your observation, and I'm definitely highlighting that in what you're saying. So, Meryl, I'm coming to you. And Jay, we'll circle back and just, the topic tonight is it rolls downhill. Is our tipping culture out of control? So that's the first question, and then I'll catch you with this next one, and you'll be all the way caught up. Let me I'll be remiss. Mary Carmen says she did delivery service for 3 years. Greatly appreciated the tip, but it's a plus and not a fee. And then she made a mention of that's where the government comes in with food stamp, Section 8, etc. Yeah, there's something to offset poverty. But when you have to maintain a poverty level to get those benefits, we find ourselves spiraling, which is kind of why I wanted to stop Celeste where she was at, because we're going into a different conversation when we start talking about all of this other stuff. I want to keep it just about tips for the moment. So, Meryl, I'm coming back to you. What does the expectation or need for gratuity say about American business and employee salary?
Or the need for gratuity? It says that that we're a greedy country, capitalism is. In itself, capitalism. There are some things about it that I don't align my values to trying to maximize every single dollar to the fullest. But I believe the folks who are in control and folks that manage our money and create rates and all this stuff, they believe in maximizing profits to the extreme. And I have this philosophy of trying to figure out what is enough. We don't have an idea of enoughness, man. But I think for the uber wealthy and for the folks that like this 1% that are up on the hill that create these things for us to fight about. So like we are distracted from like what they're doing. Like it's squeezing water out of a rock, man. And I don't get it. But again, I didn't grow up aligned with those values, and like I don't have like, you know, billions and billions of dollars and just brought up on this thing where people become inputs. It's tough, man. But
Yeah.
I will tip, and I will say during the pandemic, I lowered whatever standard I had because I was like, you know, brave people risking their lives in some cases, risking their health, doing work that other folks wouldn't do. And then, like Celeste said, people kind of took advantage of that because now our service industry and other places, even like public service, they just need warm bodies, you know, because people don't want to work with people. The best thing about working with people is people. The worst thing about working with people is people. So like folks just don't want to be in close proximity to folks now because of health and just like convenience. So like the quality of the pool of applicants is even tough because like you just need a warm body who's going to show up.
Yeah.
And for a small business during the pandemic, I definitely want to support those. For a business or folks, that share, the wonderful pieces of the diaspora that a lot of us share on this, on this show. I want to support, so I'm gonna tip. There's a wonderful coffee shop in Reedsville. If y'all ever come to Reedsville, it's called Sip. And they use a little electronic thing to pay because they don't want to deal with a bunch of cash, and it automatically has that thing on there where you can do a custom tip or whatever. And for that small business owner, I don't care if they just like handed it to me, like 'cause I know I feel like it's gonna go to improving that the business, and it's gonna go straight to those employees. So like I said before, if I know that it's going to go directly to that employee who is struggling and not making a livable wage, I don't mind doing it. I'm not going to have somebody be completely disrespectful, like throw me some coffee or be downright rude or something like that. But if they're generally okay, I'm going to support the small businesses however I can.
Nah, there's a place in Philly. I think you pay to get insulted. There's a restaurant and I'll pay for that if that's what's supposed to be happening, but not like you're saying just willy-nilly, and I'm still expected to tip. But a couple of things I wanted to really unpack on quickly before I get to you, Jay. And one of them was something that Celeste brought into the equation, and it's the servant class that used to be understood to be lesser than and requiring of less money, even to the point that when the New Deal was made, Southerners made sure, I'll say Southern politicos made sure that the servant class, which was predominantly Black Americans, were not allowed to participate in what ended up becoming retirement plans for folks and 401ks that we understand and take for granted now. So there was an energy that existed to even eliminate the ability to build a potential retirement and to maintain an understanding of a lesser than approach to those people's lives. So just so many different ways we can go with this thing. So Jay, I'm interested to hear from you. It rolls downhill. Is our tipping culture out of control? And then you can feel free to bridge that into the question of what does the expectation or need for gratuity say about American business and employee salary?
Whew, that's a loaded one. I do think that it's a supremacist type culture where we feel like we have to tip people, and we feel like the ones that we're tipping is either beneath us or worthy of something. I used to be a server, so I do have respect for servers. So I know this is going to be biased for me. Like no matter where I go, no matter what I get, my baseline is at least $10. I don't care what it is, and it's like, and then if it's people there, I'd be like, no, y'all need to get $10 too, because I try to see what it is because of that very reason. So that's my baseline. But I've also been a server, and I know how people look at individuals who are servers. They just assume that they don't have anything, and what it says about us, the fact that we have any group that need to live off a combination of wages lets us know where we are. And I think it's a little worse than capitalism. I think that's just I think that's just a new way of still having some sense of entitlement and enforcing some type of slave regime. That's just how I feel about it.
Ooh, that's heavy. So I make room in that equation, Jay, and I'm gonna come back to you and see where you fall in this. I make room in that equation for some understanding of what it is to earn a living, which there used to be an understanding to a high degree that the majority of people in those servant roles, that was young people's first jobs. That was how they found their way into the workforce and became understanding of the value of a dollar and quality service. So when I was a bus boy at Denny's, I knew what it meant to make sure the tables were cleaned off for the waitresses, and doing a good job meant that they would share their tip with me. They didn't have to tip me, but they would share their tip with me because I kept their section up. So I think that builds some kind of character in the workforce to a degree. Now, yeah, we've totally made unstable what we used to take for granted as the hierarchy of work and starting here and ending up somewhere else. Because when you go to McDonald's, man, you might have a 70-year-old woman take your order, and that's not what was supposed to be the case. So if that's a part of that equation, Jay, I get it, but I'm wondering if there was a thought process that you might incorporate into understanding, this is some young people's entry into understanding the value of doing quality work and performing at a rate that gets you a better tip.
I just want to know.
Meryl?
Yeah, that was for Jay, right quick. So let's hold on one second. Go ahead, Jay.
Oh, I just wasn't sure of when it became a teenage job, because I remember growing up that, and even the shows that we used to watch, like Alice, what was it? Somebody's Kitchen.
No, it's Alice.
Oh, was Alice?
It's a very famous show with like
right, and
40-year-old people working as wait staff. Yeah,
even Roseanne. Like, it's so many different shows that I could think of where I remember a time, and that could be because of my age too, that I remember a time that there were nothing but older people being your servers and stuff like that. And even how people pick at Waffle House, for instance, they had one of the most rigorous hiring processes, and still do today. Like, you got to do real math.
Yeah. Let me be
so
clear.
I don't know. Yeah, I didn't know when it transitioned, so that's what I was trying to figure out.
Yeah, I don't mean that only young people were doing these jobs. When I was a busboy, the waitresses were older women. I'm saying that was an understanding at some points that when a young person. I was
saying, when was it? And that's what I was asking. I was literally asking.
What's your first job? Like, that's the thing. When a young person enters the workforce, there's a point at which they become better understanding of what it is
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
You didn't. When did you work as a server?
I worked at a server when that was my senior year in high school, but my first job was like a vendor stocker and cutting grass. And that's why I was saying, like, so many people had so many different jobs. Like Chick-fil-A, for instance, that was like the good job. Mm-hmm. Like that was. So that's why I was trying to say I didn't know that was a thing. So that's why I was asking.
So you just mentioned cutting grass.
Depends on where you are. Okay, where you are too. It's regional.
Yeah, but you mentioned cutting grass. You as a young person, you got to solicit that person who you gonna cut grass, and not to go up there and say, "Hey, I'm here to cut your grass. What you gonna do about it?" You kind of you work on things as a youngster. You know what I'm saying? And you're absolutely right.
Okay.
Chick-fil-A is top shelf when it comes to really encouraging their staff, and a lot of times they are young staff, to understand what it is to do quality customer service.
Right.
Chick-fil-A and GNC are some of the best, and I mean GNC and General Nutrition in the mall, the little place where you get your vitamin supplement. That's some of the best customer service. So Les, I got to come to you because I know you had something you wanted to add. Did you have something else before? Okay, go ahead.
It was building off of what Jay Dwayne said. Well, the generation that, like me, I don't have the same feeling that Jay Dwayne had with his interpretation of what's being a server was supposed to be, because I'm 20 years younger than you all. So for my generation, I'm a millennial, a zennial, Gen Z, or I was born on the year that the cusp changed, whatever. For me and my friends growing up, it was one of those things where being a server is your first job. Working at Chick-fil-A, working at a fast food place. Like I was hired at the local Subway because my mother doesn't cook. So I ate Subway every day coming home from school. And then the Subway was up the street from the high school. But yeah, like we thought it was cool to be a server. Like we didn't understand it to be a servant class, but also that comes from us having some type of economic privilege. We didn't get jobs because we needed them. We got jobs because we wanted to spend $200 on shoes. And now that we were 16 and could get jobs and had licenses, mom and dad were like, yeah, go figure that out for yourself. So speaking from a place of privilege, but also with the understanding, like growing up, we had shows that showed serving in restaurants as being cool. Like I'm trying to think, we used to watch reruns of Saved by the Bell. And when Kelly Kapowski started working in the diner on Saved by the Bell, we thought it was cool. And then you had, oh my gosh, I forgot the Disney Channel show. That's So Raven, when her dad was a chef in the restaurant. And then you had, what is it? Hannah Montana, all these like little shows that we watched growing up. We thought being a server was cool. We couldn't wait to do it. We thought working in a restaurant was going to be so cool. Like one of the little cute reality shows.
Good
Like
Burger. That was one of them, right? Good Burger. That one.
Good Burger was one. Welcome to Good Burger. Can I take? Yes. Yes. But like for us, there's even now we go to me and one of my friends, we go to Kickback Jacks on Wednesdays. They have a special. We go for lunch. The wait staff, it's mostly young girls that are in college. You go to Hooters, y'all, the shorts at Hooters done got shorter. I went to Hooters once as a young girl, never went back. Went to Hooters as an adult. The food is delicious. I walked in and I was like, did the Hooters shorts get shorter? They said, yeah. The Hooters shorts now make a V across their butt because they basically turn them into underwear. And it's girls in college, but they work there because they're going to make more tips. So
how them tips working? That's what that is. Yeah.
My generation, the millennial Gen Z generation, we had a completely different interpretation of what serving was. And honestly, I didn't learn that serving was something like a servant class and they were left out of the New Deal and all the other things that they were left out of economically until I was taught about it in school, because being a server was cool. Like what? In high school, my senior year of high school, I was 17, 18. I wore a size 8 and I had the fittest little body. You don't think that I worked as a server during the summer with the bandeau top and the short shorts and brought home them tips and I just didn't tell my dad what I was doing? Yeah. Like that. I thought it was so cool. Me and my friends all got jobs serving. We wore the long socks, the short shorts, the bandeau top with the long wig. We thought we was doing something at 18 years old.
I'm so ashamed of you. All right, Meryl, I'm coming to you now, man. I'm coming to you now.
It's funny. I gotta show y'all something real quick.
You got the data. You got the data over there. I'll read it out.
No data. I just wanted to show y'all something real quick. Let's see if I can find it real quick.
Okay. Is it a clip?
And of course, no, it wasn't a clip. It was a picture. Now I can't. Okay. Now it won't let me do it. Okay. There it is.
You got it.
You see that?
Yeah.
That picture is our first cohort back in 2019 of NC Leap. And we're sitting in the corporate offices of Chick-fil-A.
Wow.
So we went to Atlanta and were hosted. One of our alumni from my high school, Michael Slade, he hooked us up for this really great tour of Chick-fil-A and the Mercedes-Benz stadium. So, but the reason I'm showing this is like they talked to those kids about the values of service and community and just kind of this whole story of like how Chick-fil-A started. So yeah, I just thought I would share that. So we were talking about that.
Yeah, that confirmed. So much is confirmed in terms of, I'll say just one more time, just for clarity, the formative years can be impacted by an understanding of what responsibility is and what it is to maintain quality in that exchange. So you want to be a responsible person, you get a job, but how do you maintain producing at a quality rate and maintaining the ability to earn? You do it with some good quality customer service.
These kids different though, man. These kids different, man. So like
man,
they see more opportunities to be entrepreneurs. So one cool thing is like they see opportunities to be entrepreneurs. And I tell young people, if you want to act a fool, you want to have 18 tattoos, whatever you like, cool. You better have some talent or some discernible skill and start your own business. You can tell people to kiss your ass and go jump off a lake, whatever you want to do. If you got some skill and you got start your own business, but if you don't, you got to figure out a way to navigate into these spaces. But I get it. I love some of these kids are like, just burn everything down. I'm like, okay, burn everything down, but you better have some type of resource to sustain yourself. And if you have a talent, you draw, you rap, whatever it is, you write. You better turn it into something if you don't want to navigate in society, or at least the corporate structure.
Yeah, you better keep some humility about yourself, or else you might be by yourself in that endeavor.
Absolutely.
And you might be the best at everything you do, but if nobody likes you, nobody cares for you, then
nobody cares.
You might not get an opportunity to do all those wonderful things and be successful.
Yeah.
But
Lil Wayne looks ridiculous, man. But I mean, he has a skill that he gets paid for.
Yeah, he's talented, and he's extremely talented. And there's a whole lot of ways we can go about unpacking that. But from what I understand, when he does speak about on his personal level time, he's grateful, and that's the thing. We can separate reality from fiction, and we know that a lot of this stuff is performative and just for clicks and views and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Now, it all make believe. Great. It's all WWE. Or WWF.
None of that stuff is real. Nobody is having sex with 8 women at once and shooting 3 dudes and selling drugs in front of the cops. That's not really happening. 21 Savage is not doing that stuff that he's talking about.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I was sitting up here trying to figure out who you was talking about. I said, when did The Rock start doing all that?
It's just all fake. And it was Ric Flair before it was The Rock.
Woo!
Might have been real. Anyway, Mayor, because this actually lend itself to what your first response was. I'm gonna start with you, and then I'm coming to you, Jay. What are your thoughts on the expectation of tips, no matter the quality of service? I think I know where Jay's gonna land because he said he's gonna give a robust tip, no matter. But I think there's some gray area in there. So, what are your thoughts, Meryl?
Well, I think generally, like on the young person, the disease in particular, not to pick at all of them, but there's just like entitlement, I think. And so it's just like, if I showed up and I did the bare minimum, or I did the stuff that I'm expected to do, like I got it there on time, I took your order, like I didn't mess up, so I'm entitled to get X, Y, and Z. Just like a lot of young folks are like, hey, I went to school, I got decent grades and I showed up, so like, shouldn't I get a prize? Like, no, you supposed to do that stuff, like, what, you want a cookie? But what was the other way? But the other thing that's weird, right, is and I don't know if you guys have dealt with this, but like my parents, and other people that are in their generation, like sometimes they don't tip at all, and the service is good because like it's not even about that. It's just like they just reject the idea of like giving extra money than what it costs. And like, I know there have been times I'm just like, you know what, I might try to pay it forward, because I have been to many a meal with an aunt, a grandma, mom, somebody like that, an adult in my life, as I got older. And I was like, when I realized how much people were making, and like, you should tip them if they give you pretty good service. But like, I have been in places where folks just don't give service. And I'm not going to say it's across the board with folks from the diaspora, but sometimes I feel like I've paid it forward to like make up for those opportunities when folks they're busting their tail, and just on GP, there's some people who just won't tip at all. So like, I don't know where I'm going with that, but I guess the lead thing is like the expectation side on the service side, because it's like we have a mentality and kind of a ethos with folks that are just like, hey, I'm here and I showed up, reward me for something that I was getting paid to do anyway. So
you're not gonna find disagreement with me there, and especially being that I'm grading papers now, and getting ready to put the final grades in, and there's some emails that I get and some comments that I get that are indicative of that. I did this, so why don't I get that? And I think that's a but what was the quality of this, of your this? What was the quality of it? So yeah,
but Felton, to that point, how do you have the conversation? Because like I do get tired of like seeing the, you know, get off my yard type of thing where it's like, y'all kids today, or the other day I saw this thing and this pisses me off. We can talk about this later, where there was this folks they were showing this picture, you know, looks like it's like the 1950s, and they were like, you know, and it had some black folks, and they were going to a baseball game or something like that, and they were dressed in their Sunday best, and it was like, how come the kids today can't dress like this? Back in the 60s, they'd be, you know, it's just, I get it, I feel it, but it's like that to a young person, that doesn't work. Like, so you're going to be talking past each other. So we got to get to a place where like, yes, this is what's happening, but how do we have the conversation? Because intergenerationally, we can't have these conversations with these kids. If we come from this, I know better, and you need to do it the way that we used to do. So
there's a couple of responses. Hold up. I want to keep the train on the tracks real quick. For one, real quick, to answer your question about how I respond to those students, you get what you earn. So you have to make it clear that this is a participatory sport. You don't just show up and get something because you showed up. You actually are working towards something. If you're not following what the instructions say and you're turning in subpar work, et cetera, you earn that. Nobody gave you that. You earn that.
But your relationship is transactional though, so you have some power in that space that you wouldn't have otherwise. Yeah.
If you have a syllabus, and I'm talking about students, if you have a syllabus in front of you that tells you everything you need to do to get a good grade, and you don't do any of that stuff, you do what you want to do, then you haven't followed instructions. But to the other point, yeah, the walk to school gets longer and the snow gets deeper and it's more uphill. We know that. So let's go ahead. You and this, you know, you making us feel bad about being old men. Go ahead.
No, but to say a part of it, what Mara was saying, it is generational, because you grew up with people that don't tip. In my family, the older people, they tip to basically because tipping showed back in their day that you were more like the white folks. Like basically it showed that you weren't one of the poor Black people if you could tip. So in my family, like we were always taught, if you don't tip, like they're gonna think you're poor. And as I got older and it became my own money, I was like, I really don't care if anybody think I'm poor, because they ain't gonna come to my house and pay these bills. And then I realized that it is very much a societal thing. Some people don't tip based off of service. They tip off of how they think it'll make them look. And like Felton said, the snow gets deeper, XYZ. It's one of those things where it's just a societal thing. Like me, I was taught that you tip to show white people you're not poor. And then when I got older, it turns into you tip because these people don't make a lot of money based off of the ideology that you are going to tip for the quality of service. And that's how they're going to survive. It's weird because and it also comes down to how do you teach somebody something that wasn't necessarily a right thing anyway? Like when listening to you and Jay Dwayne and Felton, when you guys are having these conversations, it's such a big generational gap between the four of us, simply based off of how I was brought up in a place where tipping is something that I'm cool with doing for the rest of my life because I'm just so used to it. Like for me, it's one of those things where you tip based off of the quality of service. But my cousin, who is 20 years older than me, she tips based off of it being a class thing. And then my mother, who is 65, she raised my cousin. She tips based off of a class thing. And my aunt who's in her 80s, she again tips off of it being a class thing. I'm the first one to interpret tipping as something that you just do based off of service because this person is going to get paid off of how you feel like they did serving you. Like tipping, I think it also goes to Jay Dwayne's point. Tipping has transitioned down to different generations simply based off of how we interpret it, based off of how we were raised to do it.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there, and a big part of it for me is always recognizing that from a generational standpoint, we get older. Everybody, and you always think something so much different than it was when you were younger. And even though if you maybe take a moment and think, it's probably not as different as it seems. Some things are, because society does different things. We are literally talking about the fact that society has right now elevated tipping to a level of normality that disrupts what was before. That is an absolute fact. And we're also throwing in some cultural things and some ideas and thoughts that are not necessarily consistent. I worked at Domino's in my youth, and the bigger tips came from the side of town that didn't have the money. And I knew that. The biggest tips I got came from the people who had less. When I delivered into well-to-do areas like Forest Oaks, I already knew I was taking a long drive for a little money. So it's just, I guess it all depends, demographic, geographic, etc. Jay, I'm coming to you, man, because we're running low on time, and I'm gonna bring this question to you, but feel free to go where you want to. That's what we do in the space. So what are your thoughts on the expectation of tips, no matter the quality of service?
I will say, being that I'm from Georgia, I think that this is not just generational. I think it's also regional, because every time we have these conversations about upbringing, it's like, I didn't experience that. And that's why I always tell people, sometimes we think just because we're of the same race and in the same area, that we realize that diversity happens on all different types of spectrums. And this is a prime example of that. Like Celeste, I honestly feel like as long as there is an opportunity for me to give, I'm going to be a tipper. I see the need not just from an economic level. It's kind of like, to me, sometimes it's like your grandma who slid you some money. You didn't necessarily need it, but it was the thought of being thought about. And I do believe in appreciating people. On the other side, too, I don't dismiss the fact that there are people who do need those actual tips. And I struggle with a couple of things. For one, this is the largest intergenerational working class that we've ever had. And so now, like, even the older people speak about millennials, like millennials are young. And I'm like, baby, the millennials are 44. I mean, these are not young people. And I think that what's happening, I do agree that every time we get up, we are disillusioned by our generation. And we forget there was a little Kim in every generation. There was a Nicki Minaj in every generation. There was poor work ethic in every generation. Even like I tell some of my friends that I'm in orbits with, y'all sitting on these interwebs saying all of this, but I went to school with you. I knew what I was dealing with. So it's like some of us are just disillusioned, and maybe I've been fortunate enough to know. I knew I was a little terrorist growing up. So the fact that I got little terrorists now, I know that I'm reaping what I sow. But some people are so disillusioned by what it is, and like, no, all of y'all are a problem. And it's the entitlement on all fronts is why we can't compromise. And I think that that's the part that we miss, because we all want somebody to conform their way. And I say this last story. I was in Moe's, because I like Moe's better than that other place. So I was in Moe's, and I noticed that everybody in there was at least under 21. And the way that the people were talking to them, they talked to them because they were children. And I had to interject social responsibility. I'm big on that, and say, hey, all of these are babies. They're learning how to interact from you. They were really trying. Yes, they don't know customer service as excellent as it could be. Yes, they don't know how to articulate because they don't have that expansive of a vocabulary. But why are we going to treat them as they're less than? You ain't going to do the job. Give them an opportunity to grow. So sometimes it's just the fact that it is their first experience. And it's our responsibility culturally to look out for these children, because I'm older, so I could have a real old child. I won't want nobody talking to my child like that. And there's a social responsibility. If you expect something, give them an opportunity. Like sometimes I help the student rephrase their words. Like if they're saying something, I'll rephrase it again. If they don't say, can I help you? I say, hey, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? Until they say it back. I'm fine. Because it's some of those things you can just teach them along the way without saying, I'm not going to tip you. And then I'll leave them a little note. I'll say, nah, I am extra with this. That's the teacher in me. I leave them a tip and I say, hey, I would have gave you more, but these are the things I think you should work on moving forward. But overall, good job. And I do that.
Boy,
that's what tough, man. People aren't socialized to handle conflict, though. I think that's the problem. Is like folks just don't handle conflict. They don't know that we're not socialized, or we're not used to being able to handle conflict. So
that's hilarious, Jay. That you one of them folks that who he think he is.
Write you a note in a minute. I'll write you a note.
Leaving me this note.
And they be talking about you when you leave too.
Yo, she said she do that too. So that's all right.
I just want to say, Isla and Leilani. They are not terrorists. I back them up today.
Man,
what's going on?
Send them over to the Middle East. It'll be peace.
You have a final word, Meryl, because I want to make a quick announcement at the end. Okay, so just so everybody knows, we'll be off for like 2 weeks. We'll be back at the end of the month with we're calling it annual. Meryl's gonna get some treats and things together for some contest winning, some trivia questions and things of that nature. So Mary Carmen, I think you usually participate in that. So we'll be glad to have you on air, and we'll get some questions going and see if you can stump me, because I generally win and just give it back. That's what's been happening. I'm that good at these things.
$200 worth of prizes happening in 2 weeks.
Paper that you get right for the new year. So again, want to thank you all for showing out as always. Mary Carmen, I'm glad that you do enjoy that. So feel free to show up. I think that'll be the 28th. We'll be back on the 28th. We will do a part 2 to this show because, as always, we didn't get everywhere we needed to go. And it don't matter how many people it is. The conversation just goes where it goes and time runs out. So I'm appreciative. Meryl, thanks for showing out. Celeste, Jay Dwayne, Kaylee, thanks for being behind the scenes and keeping us rolling. I apologize if I'm a little choppy this evening, but I don't know why, but it seems on my end I am. Everybody else looks smooth. I look a little choppy, but I think the message was given and received. Happy holidays to you all. Take good care, and we'll see you soon. Grown Folks Business out.